investigation into Haftar war crimes in Libya significantly progressing, ICC says. There is massive migration to e-commerce following the impact of COVID on businesses in DR Congo. President-elect Joe Biden defends Obama's legacy healthcare program from abolition. These and more coming on The World Today. Good evening, you're watching The World Today with me, Sohna Tunkara, and now to our stories. The Gambian-born prosecutor Fatou Bensouda on Tuesday presented to the UN Secretary Council her office's 20th report on the situation of atrocities in Libya. In a virtual meeting, Bensouda said her office is committed to bring justice to the victims of atrocities in Libya and that investigations have significantly progressed. Here is more of that. On July 7th, the Libyan Foreign Ministry announced that the Hague-based International Criminal Court agreed to dispatch an investigation team to the North African country. Their mission to look into allegations that wherein General Khalifa Haftar's militias committed war crimes in southern Tripoli and the strategic city of Tahuna in the west of the country since 2016. The charges against Haftar's militias include crimes against humanity such as massacres, kidnapping, torture, and the disposal of corpses. The ICC's chief prosecutor, Fatou Bensouda, welcomes the ceasefire agreement between Libyan parties and implores for its swift implementation to usher peace and stability for the people of Libya.
Victims of atrocity crimes in Libya must be reassured that notwithstanding any ceasefire or future agreement, individuals alleged to be responsible for serious crimes falling under the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court will be promptly arrested and surrendered to the court to face charges for their alleged crimes.
Haftar's offensive is said to be backed internationally, which the chief prosecutor calls for concerted effort from all member states to give justice to victims and hold perpetrators accountable.
The non-execution of arrest warrants is the foremost obstacle to our collective capacities to give hope to the people and victims of crimes in Libya. I urge this Council and the member states to take effective and concrete steps to ensure that safe havens are not provided to fugitives from justice who face serious criminal charges before the International Criminal Court. Inaction in this regard allows abhorrent crimes that are alleged to have been committed in places such as Tahuna to continue. There is a collective responsibility to ensure ICC warrants of arrest are duly executed.
In recent discoveries, alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by General Khalifa Haftar are reported to have involved mass burial in Tahuna and south of Tripoli. Reports indicate that 200 bodies were recovered in mass graves, while ongoing investigations continue to reveal more. Libya's ambassador Tahir El-Soni said there is concrete evidence enough to take action against perpetrators.
Families were found in these graves, including women and children, as well as victims buried alive. I do not know what more you want than these facts, to punish and hold those responsible for these acts, as you know very well, those who carried them out, those who gave the commands for their commitment, and those who supported them with finances and weapons.
According to Fatou Bensouda, her office received incredible information regarding the increased use of landmines and improvised explosive devices against civilians. She said the evidence was discovered after the retreat of forces from Tripoli and surrounding areas. Mines and improvised explosive devices were reported to have been placed in the garage, kitchens and bedrooms of civilian homes. As a result, more than 342,000 people were displaced and 125 homes reported to have been destroyed. For iAfrica TV, Sohna Tunkara. By General Haftar's militia group. Now, a man who participated in a peaceful protest in April 2016 calling for electoral reform he was tortured
The 54-year-old is a youth mobilizer for the opposition United Democratic Party, UDP. 4 years ago, on April 14, Modou Touré was among opposition activists calling for electoral reform in a protest in Serekunda, the largest town in the Gambia. Their arrest, detention, and subsequent maltreatment left many injuries and at last one dead in custody. On Wednesday, Touré told the Truth Commission how he ended up at the April 2016 opposition protest.
Then I saw a PIU truck coming with high speed. Some people ran away. Those who didn't run away stayed where they are. Then they came into the crowd and started arresting the people one by one. And they were throwing people on board their truck.
Mr. Touré, can you tell the Commission who was doing the picking up of people?
Mr. Touré, hanga before is afono commission jumal tarta num kanyinge kamol tombon ke fay morokon.
Paramilitary. The paramilitary were the people.
At that time, were they armed?
Yeah, they were having guns and batons. And they were even beating some people. Yes.
Continue to tell us what happened after they started throwing people up the truck.
When we were grabbed and thrown on board this vehicle, then the vehicle started and took the road towards the PIU camp. So when we went to the PIU, some of the PIU were saying, you people are shameless, you are rude, you people want to bring confusion into this country.
Solo Sandeng, who led the protest, was the National Organizing Secretary of the opposition UDP. He died in detention shortly after his arrest for participating in a peaceful protest. According to Touré, after their arrest in Serekunda, they were escorted by paramilitaries and NIA officers to Mile 2 Central Prison and locked up. Later that night, they faced interrogations at the NIA headquarters in Banjul, in the capital city of the Gambia, where he faced torture.
There was a push and pull. They hit me on my neck, and at the time when all my joints went limp, they made me to lie down. They tied my chest to the table with my hands, because what they tied me up with, it looked like if it is something which had electricity in it. I became very weak, and they came and stood over me. They beat me up to a point. Almost after 5 minutes, they will pour some water on me, and they will wait for a little bit. And they will come back again, and they will beat me up for some time. And after the beating, they will use a small minus container and take cold water and pour it over my head and my face up to the point of some water will come out of my nose.
Touré said he was asked by an NIA operative if the UDP leader, Ousseynou Dabo, was the one who ordered the protest for electoral reforms. And when he replied the negative, the NIA operative Lamin Fati told his colleagues to continue beating him up. The Truth Commission had on Wednesday that Touré sustained injuries on his body as a result of the beatings and that he was denied medical attention. Reporting for iAfrican News, I am Aissatou Tambandour.
Tortured victims of the National Intelligence Agency continue to appear before the Truth-Seeking Commission to narrate their stories. Now, from that, facing tough Republican refusal to accept his victory, Joe Biden is out to defend the 2010 Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The health program, which was instituted under President Obama, is being challenged by the Trump administration in the Supreme Court to have it abolished. Amadou Kante reports.
American President-elect Joe Biden has defended the Affordable Care Act, signed into law by former President Barack Obama back in 2010. Joe Biden was speaking in Wellington, Delaware on Tuesday, condemning the Trump administration's argument in the Supreme Court to eliminate the health law. He said the Affordable Care Act is a matter of life and death for many Americans, noting that the court's decision will determine whether the health coverage of over 20 million Americans will be put at risk.
Let's be absolutely clear about what's at stake. The consequences of the Trump administration's argument are not academic or an abstraction. For many Americans, they are a matter of life and death in a literal sense. This argument will determine whether health care coverage of more than 20 million Americans who acquired it under the Affordable Care Act will be ripped away in the middle of the nation's worst pandemic in a century. Over 100 million people, as the Vice President-elect pointed out, over 100 million people with pre-existing conditions like asthma, diabetes, cancer could once again be denied coverage.
The U.S. High Court ruled 8 years ago to leave intact the essential components of the law known as the Obamacare. But President Donald Trump and his Republican allies are arguing to have it overturned. Meanwhile, if the 6-3 conservative court agrees with the Republican Party, millions of Americans could lose their health care coverage. The president-elect also took the opportunity to address unsubstantiated claims of electoral fraud from the Trump campaign.
Put together today, we're going to be moving along in a consistent manner, putting together our administration, the White House, and reviewing who we're going to pick for the cabinet positions. And nothing's going to stop that. And so I'm confident that the fact that they're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning and what we're able to do between now and January 20th.
Since Joe Biden was projected to win last week's U.S. elections, Trump's campaign has filed dozens of lawsuits in multiple states claiming election fraud and irregularities, but has not produced any evidence.
Congo, the e-commerce business gained momentum during the lockdown when several entrepreneurs ventured into the new market to continue their business. Many people and medium-sized businesses had the opportunity to penetrate both local and international markets despite the poor internet connection in the country.
The increase in mobile phone networks and affordable smartphones in the DRC has resulted in the spread of e-commerce in many large cities. Many young people use their smartphones to get the latest information and purchase items online. The COVID-19 pandemic has spurred Congolese investors to set up digital platforms to tap into the new market.
Le confinement a boosté les sociétés du numérique.
The lockdown boosted the growth of digital platforms here in the DRC. I started buying and selling products online after I noticed an increase in the sale of goods and services.
De la société à consommer.
Al Kitenge is a Congolese entrepreneur who has set up an online retail platform that sells food products. He's partnered with farmers and his business associates to supply packaged food online.
I can assure you that e-commerce will be a serious opportunity for Congo. It will cut the middleman in many ways. It will speed some processes, and it will help people to have access to not only goods but also services. That's where we're going. As we're talking, I was telling you that we are starting e-Mabele, which is actually e-commerce for local foods and products to be sold on a platform.
The spread of e-commerce in the DRC is limited due to poor telecommunication infrastructure and the high costs of the internet. there are also regulatory issues that have hampered its growth.
We still have two things which can be considered as roadblocks. One is central bank with the national switch, national payment system. They are late. They were supposed to be up and running for now. As soon as they will be up and running, we will even be faster. Second thing is mobile money, delaying access to APIs.
According to government records, there were 16.35 million internet users in the DRC in January this year, but the country has a low internet penetration rate, especially in rural areas. The growth of e-commerce presents an opportunity for small and medium-sized enterprises in the DRC to access international markets and make profit. But the country's poor telecommunication infrastructure and the lack of laws to regulate the electronic payment systems are challenges that need to be addressed to enable businesses to thrive in the virtual marketplace.
Many entrepreneurs in DR Congo have migrated to e-marketing to boost up sales due to the impact of COVID-19. Now we'll go with a short commercial break and continue with the rest of our stories. Stay tuned. If you're just tuning in, you're watching The World Today, and now to the rest of our stories. Stakeholders validated the Gambia's national early warning strategy meant to help prepare in advance to address natural disasters. The strategy is being supported by the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the ICC reports.
Natural disasters and climate change pose major problems for the Gambia. As a result, the government of the Gambia requested FAO support to develop a national early warning strategy. It is intended to support the agriculture sector to become more resilient by promoting urgent and immediate adaptation measures. The FAO representative, Mashibu Durapidi, said that the impact of natural disasters on the Africa is huge.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that natural disasters fueled by climate change do account for a lot of economic losses. In 2019, it is estimated that globally $200 billion were lost to natural disasters. When we look at the African continent, it is estimated that about 15 billion can be traced to losses that come from natural disasters.
Natural disasters and climate change are said to have mostly affected vulnerable people who depend on climate-sensitive livelihoods and have limited access to resources and information sharing. The Minister of Agriculture, Ami Fabre, explained how climate change affects livestock production and the measures taken to remedy those effects.
The climate-related hazard will negatively affect a range of sectors. Drought, floods, and increase in temperature reduce the ability to grow crops, as well as affecting other aspects of the value chain. Example, drying, storage, and transport to market. Livestock production is constrained by scarcity of feed and water and emergency of disease during the long dry season, aggravated by rampant bushfire, which consume most of the standing heat, crop residues, and by the product to feed livestock. Non-availability of inadequate feed during the dry season and poor management of grazing lands are considered major constraints to success of the livestock subsector.
The Vice President, Dr. Issa Toure, said Gambia government is committed to fight against climate change. Toure, who is also the chairperson of the Disaster Governing Council, calls on stakeholders to work together towards the formulation and implementation of a disaster risk strategy.
No single institution or agency can provide a fully comprehensive solution. It is therefore essential that all stakeholders work together to narrow knowledge gaps and to develop disaster risk strategy. A well-developed governance and institutional arrangements support a successful development and sustainability of sound early warning systems.
Early warning systems are important adaptive measures for climate change uncertainties. They are integrated to prepare for climate-related events. A successful early warning system can enhance food security and nutrition, save lives and livelihoods, and support long-term sustainability. For iAfrica News, I am Daisy Say.
Now, in the United States, Secretary of State has said that there will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration as the projected winner of the November 3rd election, Joe Biden, continues to receive congratulatory messages from world leaders. Mike Pompeo made these remarks during a press conference in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday afternoon, widening fears that Trump may refuse to leave the White House on January 20th. Details of that in this report.
With defeated U.S. President refusing to recognize the President-elect Joe Biden, the Secretary of State has made comments about a second term for Donald Trump, which Democrats rubbish as baseless and dangerous. Mike Pompeo's comments followed a decision by Attorney General William Barr to loosen restrictions on federal prosecutors investigating voter fraud, which Donald Trump claimed was rampant. He insisted that every legal vote must be counted, a phrase Trump himself used to suggest without evidence that widespread voter fraud helped Biden, who surpassed the 270 Electoral College votes necessary to secure the White House.
There will be a smooth transition to a second Trump administration. Right? We're ready. The world is watching what's taking place here. We're going to count all the votes. When the process is complete, there'll be electors selected. There's a process. The Constitution lays it out pretty clearly. The world should have every confidence that the transition necessary to make sure that the State Department is functional today, successful today, and successful with the president who's in office on January 20th, a minute afternoon, will also be successful. I went through a transition on the front, and I've been on the other side of this.
The Democratic chairman of the House of Foreign Affairs Committee told The Guardian on Tuesday that Pompeo shouldn't play along with baseless and dangerous attacks on the legitimacy of last week's elections. Meanwhile, Pompeo said they are confident that they will do all the things that are necessary to make sure that the United States government continues to perform its national security function as they go forward. Pompeo is the latest senior U.S. official to refuse to accept the results of last week's presidential election. He is one of Trump's most loyal confidants, and he rarely breaks with the president in public. Still, his unwillingness to accept the election result is just more evident that Trump will not easily quit power. He also commented on the arms sales of the United Arab Emirates, saying they are confident that they will be able to provide them with weapon systems that will ensure their security.
So we'll have significant announcements with respect to that here very, very soon. We continue to review arms sales all across the world, including to our important friend and partner in the United Arab Emirates. We're confident we will be able to provide them weapon systems that will ensure their security and do the work that we all need to do collectively to counter the threat from the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Meanwhile, world leaders have been congratulating President-elect Joe Biden. His transition team on Tuesday released the names of the people on its agency review teams. The teams are dispatched during the transition to various agencies and departments to assess the situations there ahead of the transfer of power. For iAfrica News, I am Julden Yai-Suare.
The Trump administration still refused the projected victory of Joe Biden. Now, in a bid to avoid expanding the country's deficit, the Tunisian government has withdrawn the 2020 supplementary budget it submitted to the National Assembly for approval. The COVID-19 pandemic has likely affected the country's economy, and authorities were hoping to improve the budget to minimize its ramifications. However, the lawmakers said the government did not present justifiable reasons for its request.
Tunisian lawmakers have confirmed that the Finance Commission has requested the withdrawal of the extra budget bill that would have left the battered economy facing an accelerated debt distress.
The project of the extra budget bill is terrifying for many reasons. The numbers presented by the government are unclear and unjustified. The disagreement with the central bank is also alarming. Spending an additional $3.7 million and paying the bills of dozens of state companies in 2 months is unacceptable. The budget needs to be reviewed.
During a hearing session in Parliament, the governor of the Central Bank of Tunisia declared that he does not oppose financing the supplementary finance law for 2020. He, however, insisted that this measure should be done in acceptable proportions that preserve the major financial balances of the North African state.
If approved, the current bill will certainly boost inflation, cut reserves and weigh on the local currency. The government has not started the implementation of structural reforms. The central bank is committed to assist the state on condition that the government submits an official request for the identification of responsibilities and which gives a legal dimension to the central bank's mission in financing the budget.
Tunisia's government announced that the high level of budget deficit for 2020 is partly due to the negative repercussions of the coronavirus-induced economic crisis. In addition, economists say it's the result of the way the budget figures have been presented in recent years and the optimistic scenarios which were wrongly included in those budgets.
Public finances were hit hard over the past 10 years because we've made many mistakes. The evaluation was wrong and many state expenses were not included. We should learn from this unprecedented crisis, which is not the result of the coronavirus crisis as the government claims. The pandemic has only deepened the situation, but the lack of political will to implement structural economic reforms is to blame.
Economists have highlighted the importance of implementing structural reforms and finding permanent and non-cyclical solutions for economic and financial policies, taking into account the unstable economic, political and social challenges in the North African country. Tunisian authorities believe that the pre-pandemic economic situation was exacerbated by the COVID-19 crisis. The Finance Commission at the Tunisian Parliament has urged the government to submit a new and more realistic extra budget bill within 2 weeks.
That was all on the world today. Gambia 24 is up next shortly with Mariama Cham. Stay tuned.